Shalom, friends! Welcome! My name is Shoshana, and where I come from, we love to tell stories aloud. Most people don't know how to read, so that's the main way we tell stories. When we do, we like to have the audience, in this case, you, join in. What do you think? Will you help me tell a story? Today, I'd like to tell you one of our oldest stories. This story is one of waiting and of laughter. Do you like to wait for things? Waiting can be very hard, even if it's for a good reason. Now, I bet you like to laugh. Yeah? I bet everybody does. And did you know that it's good for you? We have a proverb that says, "A joyful heart is good medicine." Can you say that with me? A joyful heart is good medicine. So laughing makes you healthier. I know I feel good when I'm laughing. Every time I mention laughter in this story, will you pretend to laugh with me? But this story isn't just about waiting or laughter, but also about a promise. Now, rest your feet, put on your listening ears, and get ready for the miracle of laughter. A long time ago, thousands of years before you were born, a man named Abraham and his wife Sarah were given a special purpose by God. They were to become God's chosen people, the father and mother of the nation of Israel. God said their descendants would bless the world and be as many as the sand on the shore. Have you ever tried to count sand at the beach? It's impossible. But there was one big problem. Abraham and Sarah couldn't have a baby. There wouldn't be countless descendants if they couldn't even have one child. This made Abraham and Sarah very sad. Can you show me what it looks like to be sad? Good job. Well, despite this, Abraham and Sarah kept following God. At one point, they tried to make the promise come true on their own by having Abraham marry an Egyptian woman. She had a son, Ishmael, with Abraham, and while the situation caused a lot of problems at home, Abraham and Sarah thought maybe that's how God would continue their family. But this meant that only Abraham would be included in the family tree, not Sarah. Still, it was better than having no children at all. But God appeared to Abraham after Ishmael was born and again promised, "As for Sarah, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and kings of peoples shall come from her." Abraham bowed down to God, but secretly he laughed. Can you pretend to laugh sadly with me? His heart still hurt with sadness, and he said to himself, "I'm 99 years old and Sarah is 90. There's no way we could have a baby now." He asked God to make Ishmael the promised son. God said, "I will bless Ishmael, but Sarah will be the one to have a promised son, and you will name him Isaac." Now, the name Isaac means he laughs. This made Abraham nervous. God obviously knew what he had been thinking, how he had laughed at God's words. But God only said, "I will establish my promise with Isaac, whom Sarah will give birth to at this time next year." Next year? After years of waiting, God finally gave Abraham a date. But Abraham and Sarah were still skeptical. A few days later, on a very hot day, Abraham was sitting in the shade outside of his tent. Have you ever been outside on a summer day and the heat feels like it's weighing on you? Like it's so hot, all you want to do is sit and drink something cold? Can you show me what that looks like? This was that kind of day. But as he was sitting, Abraham looked up, and through the haze he saw three figures, like three men coming toward him. Something in Abraham told him that these three men were from God. Despite the heat, Abraham immediately got up and ran to the men. Pretend to run with me. "Please come to my house," he said, falling on his knees. "I'll give you water to wash and make you a delicious meal, and you can have strength for your journey." Now, I'm sure you know that serving someone food is a way to show that you care, that they're important to you. And this is what Abraham wanted to do. The men agreed, and Abraham ran back to his tent. Here, let's run like Abraham. "Sarah!" Abraham called. "Sarah, quick, make some bread. I'm going to get a calf and some cheese to feed some guests from God." Abraham and Sarah rushed to make a delicious meal, and then Abraham rushed to serve it to the men. Okay. While they were eating under one of the tall trees, the men asked Abraham where Sarah was. "In the tent," he told them. Now, Sarah was hiding right inside of the tent door, listening to their conversation. I'm sure you've never done that. While she was listening, the men said, "The Lord will return to you this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." When she heard this, Sarah had to stop herself from laughing out loud. Can you pretend to stifle a laugh with me, like Sarah? Her heart was hurting because she had never had a baby, and she didn't want it to hurt more. She laughed inside and said doubtfully, "Abraham and I are both very old. Will I really have a baby?" The next moment, she heard the men outside say, "Why did Sarah laugh and doubt what we just said?" She froze with fear. How did they hear her thoughts? "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" they said. "Sarah will have a son next year." Sarah decided to pretend she had not overheard their conversation and denied laughing when she talked to Abraham later, but he called her out on her lie. God knew what she had said in her heart. Well, the next year passed, and do you know what happened? What do you think? God kept his promise, and Sarah became pregnant. A year later, when she was 91 and Abraham was 100, she gave birth to a son, just as the men had said. Abraham and Sarah were so happy that they laughed, but this time with joy. This laughter healed their hurting hearts. They remembered the name that God had given for their son, Isaac. Remember what it means? It means he laughs or he will rejoice. Cradling her baby in her arms, Sarah said, "This was impossible, but God made laughter for me. Everyone who hears about this will laugh with joy over me." This is a story of God's faithfulness and provision, and of trust. In this story, God kept his promise to Sarah and Abraham, even though they doubted him. They had to wait a long time, but in the end, God gave them a baby and the good medicine of joyful laughter. This is something that I try to remember in Nazareth when I have to wait on a promise. The next time you feel like you have to wait for a really long time, or you're feeling sad, try finding something that will bring you joyful laughter. It might make you feel better. Thank you for joining me, my friends. Come back next week, but until then, shalom.